All right, welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into fusion energy today.
Oh, exciting.
I know, it's a topic that it seems like you're pretty interested in.
Yeah.
Especially Germany's advancements with the Wendelstein 7X stellarator. Now, fusion, it's always kind of felt like a future tech, way out there.
Right.
But lately, it feels like we're on the verge of something big.
It does feel that way.
You've got like a whole stack of articles and research papers all kind of buzzing about Germany's fusion bomb.
Right.
Not literally, of course.
Okay.
But it seems like they've cracked some serious code with this Wendelstein 7X.
They're doing some impressive work, yeah.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of all that, maybe we should take a step back.
Yeah, good idea.
Just for anyone who needs a refresher, can you give us like a Fusion 101? What are we talking about when we say fusion energy, and why should people care?
Okay, so imagine harnessing the power of the sun, right?
Yeah.
That's essentially what fusion energy is all about.
Right.
We're talking about taking lighter atomic nuclei, like isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium, and fusing them together to form heavier ones, like helium. And in this process, a tiny, tiny bit of mass is converted into a tremendous amount of energy. Wow. According to Einstein's famous equation, EmCO5.
Okay, so we're talking about clean, limitless energy.
Absolutely.
That's the holy grail, isn't it?
It really is. It has the potential to completely revolutionize our energy landscape, but replicating the conditions of the sun's core here on Earth, that's a monumental challenge. We need to achieve temperatures over 100 million degrees Celsius.
100 million degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling.
It is, and then you need to control this superheated matter which exists as plasma. Wow. It's its own challenge.
It sounds like it. No wonder it's taken, decades and decades of research to even get to this point. So speaking of that, can you maybe walk us through some of the highlights and setbacks of fusion research? Like I'm curious about, what were the key turning points that kind of led us to where we are today?
Well, the story of fusion research is full of twists and turns.
I bet.
Early experiments in the 1930s showed some promise.
Okay.
But it wasn't really until the 1940s that things really took off, unfortunately driven by the development of the hydrogen bomb.
Right.
But after World War II, the focus shifted to peaceful applications of fusion, leading to the exploration of all these different confinement methods.
Right, because I remember reading about tokamaks, which are those like donut-shaped reactors, and those becoming the dominant approach.
You're right. So tokamaks used magnetic fields to confine the plasma, and they showed great potential. And this led to major projects like JET in the UK and TFTR in the US. And they achieved some pretty significant milestones back in the 1980s. But even with these advancements, practical fusion power still seemed elusive. Yeah. Which led to the creation of ITER.
Ah, yes. ITER. The International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor.
Yeah.
It's like colossal collaborative project.
Exactly.
Yes.
So ITER, was conceived in the late 1980s, and it really represents this global effort to demonstrate that fusion power is feasible.
Okay.
It's the largest tokamak ever built. It's a massive undertaking with a price tag of around $20 billion.
Wow. Okay, so ITER is all about proving that fusion can actually work.
Yes.
On a large scale. But then we have Germany shaking things up with their Wendelstein 7X.
Right.
Which is a completely different approach, right?
Right. So the Wendelstein 7X is a stellarator.
Okay.
And this design, although it was conceived early on, it was considered more challenging to build.
Really?
But with advancements in computing and engineering, it's showing incredible promise now.
Okay.
So instead of that donut shape of the tokamak, it uses a complex, twisted magnetic field to contain the plasma.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. Why did Germany choose to go down this less traveled path with the stellarator? What are the potential advantages over the seemingly more popular tokamak design?
So you see, tokamaks, while they're very promising, they have this kind of Achilles heel,
Okay.
They're prone to what we call disruptions, which are sudden losses of plasma confinement, and those can actually damage the reactor.
Oh, so it's like one of those old cartoon bombs with a sputtering fuse,
Yeah, yeah.
Like one wrong spark and the whole thing goes haywire.
That's a good analogy.
But the stellarator with its twisted magnetic field, and it kind of avoids all that, right?
That's the idea. So stellarators like the Wendelstein 7X are designed for continuous operation without the risk of these disruptive events. You can think of it like, a marathon runner versus a sprinter.
Okay. Yeah.
The tokamak can achieve these bursts of intense energy, but it's prone to kind of stumbling. Whereas the stellarator, it's in it for the long haul.
Right. So it's a much steadier approach.
Exactly.
Which I guess would make sense for a power source that you want to be reliable.
Yeah, exactly. Steady as she goes.
Yeah. But I imagine, creating those intricate magnetic fields, that can't be easy.
No, it's not like bending a few fridge magnets.
Right, so it's pretty complex.
You're absolutely right. Building a stellarator requires some serious computational muscle engineering precision. These coils that generate the magnetic field have to be shaped and positioned just so.
Wow.
Like a giant magnetic puzzle.
Okay, so it's a huge engineering challenge. And that's partly why stellarators were initially seen as more challenging to build, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's why Tokamaks took the lead for a while.
Exactly.
But now with all these, advancements in computing and manufacturing, Germany's like, hold my beer, we've got this.
Right, precisely.
Yeah.
And the results they're getting from the Wendelstein 7X, they're pretty impressive, I have to say. They've achieved plasma discharges lasting over 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
That temperature is exceeding 100 million degrees Celsius.
That's incredible.
Which, to put that into perspective, previous stellarators, they struggled to maintain stability for even a few seconds.
Wow, so 30 minutes, that's a huge leap.
It is.
Okay, you've convinced me stellarators are serious contenders in this fusion race.
They are.
But before we go too deep into all the technical specifics, I want to understand what makes the Wendelstein 7X so special? What are the records it's broken and why is that significant?
Sure. So one of the most remarkable things they've achieved is the plasma density.
Okay.
So the density they've reached is comparable to what you'd find in a tokamak, which is a big deal for a stellarator.
Okay.
And higher density means more collisions between the particles,
right,
which leads to more fusion reactions and therefore more energy output.
So it's not just about holding the plasma for a long time. It's about how much you can pack into it.
Exactly. It's about, more bang for your buck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. More bang for your buck. Okay, so they're packing a lot in there.
And they're doing this while maintaining excellent confinement, meaning they're keeping that energy within the plasma for longer periods.
Wow, okay.
It's a real testament to the precision of their magnetic field design.
It sounds like this Wendelstein 7X, it's like a precision instrument.
It is.
Fine-tuned to create those, perfect conditions for fusion.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see why there's so much buzz around this project.
Yeah, it's a remarkable feat of engineering. It's, a testament to the ingenuity of the team at the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics.
Right.
They've been pushing the boundaries of stellarator research for decades, and the Wendelstein 7X is really the culmination of all their efforts.
Okay, this German innovation story, I'm hooked. But before we get too deep into their work, I want to shift gears for a second.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about magnetic confinement fusion.
Right.
The tokamaks and the stellarators. But aren't there other ways to achieve fusion?
You're right. There's another approach called inertial confinement fusion, or ICF for short, and it's quite different from magnetic confinement.
Okay.
So instead of using magnetic fields to confine the plasma, ICF uses powerful lasers or particle beams to implode a tiny target that contains the fusion fuel.
So it's like a miniature star exploding in a lab.
That's a good way to put it.
That sounds intense.
It is.
So why pursue that? What are the potential advantages of ICF over the magnetic confinement?
Well, one potential advantage is that ICF doesn't require these massive, complex magnets that you see in tokamaks and stellarators. So the equipment needed for ICF can be more compact.
Ah, okay. So it could be a more streamlined approach in terms of the infrastructure.
Sure, exactly, yeah.
But I imagine there are pretty significant challenges with ICF as well.
Of course, there are always challenges. One of the biggest is achieving a perfectly symmetrical implosion of the target.
Oh, I see.
So any imperfections can lead to instabilities, which reduce the efficiency of the fusion reaction. And the lasers or particle beams required for ICF, they need to be incredibly powerful and precisely focused.
It sounds like a very high-stakes game of cosmic billiards.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
But hasn't there been some progress with ICF? I vaguely remember reading about some breakthroughs in the news.
You're right, there have been significant advances. In fact, the National Ignition Facility, NUF, in the United States, has achieved record levels of fusion energy output using lasers to implode these tiny fuel pellets.
Wow, okay, so it's not just theoretical. They're actually getting fusion energy from this approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so it seems like both magnetic and inertial confinement fusion have their own, like, strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder which path will ultimately lead us to the finish line in this race for practical fusion power.
It's a fascinating question. And, the answer might not be so clear-cut. Perhaps both approaches will play a role in shaping the future of fusion energy.
That's a good point.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've been really deep in the technical weeds here, and I want to make sure we're connecting this back to you. So you mentioned you're particularly interested in Germany's advancements, right?
Absolutely. The Wendelstein 7X, I mean, that's really piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is not just the technology itself, but the people behind it, the institutions that are driving this innovation.
Right.
So I'd love to learn more about the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics, or IPP, as you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Like, what's their story, and how do they fit into the larger landscape of fusion research?
Sure. So the IPP is one of the world's leading fusion research centers.
Okay.
And they've been at the forefront of stellarator research for decades now. They have two main facilities, the ASDEX upgrade, which is a tokamak, and of course the Wendelstein 7X. And what's interesting is they're not just focused on pure research, they're also collaborating with private companies, like Gauss Fusion, for example, to try to bridge the gap between these scientific breakthroughs and commercial applications.
Wait, so they're working with a company that's actually trying to, like, bring fusion power to market.
That's right.
That's interesting. Tell me more about Gauss Fusion. What are their goals?
Well, Gauss Fusion is a German company, and they have a bold vision to build commercially viable fusion reactors that can feed electricity into the grid.
Wow.
They're focused on developing compact modular fusion power plants that can be, deployed more easily than these massive one-off projects like ITER.
Right. So it sounds like they're taking a much more pragmatic, like, market-driven approach. Like, ITER is this grand scientific endeavor to prove that fusion is possible.
Yeah.
But Gauss Fusion is already thinking about, like, okay, but how do we actually make this practical and profitable?
Exactly. And they're tackling some of those key challenges that we discussed earlier, like, for example, the availability of tritium.
Right, tritium, that rare and radioactive isotope of hydrogen.
Yeah.
And we talked about how ITER will initially rely on external sources of tritium, which are pretty limited.
Yeah.
So what is Gauss Fusion doing to address that?
Well, they're developing something called breeding blankets.
Breeding blankets.
Yeah. So these are modules within the reactor that can actually produce tritium by harnessing the neutrons that are released during the fusion reaction.
Wow.
So these blankets essentially create a self-sustaining fuel cycle.
So they're solving the fuel problem by basically creating a closed loop.
Yeah.
Generating their own tritium within the reactor itself.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing. It sounds like Gauss Fusion is really thinking ahead.
They are.
They're anticipating the hurdles that need to be overcome for fusion to actually become a reality.
Absolutely. And that kind of forward thinking is essential if we want to see fusion power become a viable energy source within our lifetimes.
Okay, before we get, like, too carried away with visions of a fusion-powered future, I want to take a step back, make sure we haven't lost sight of the big picture. Like, what does all this fusion research mean for the world? What are the potential implications of this technology beyond just clean energy? That's what I really want to explore next.
Those are the important questions, and that's exactly what we're going to delve into in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so let's shift gears a bit from the technical marvels to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
We've talked about the science, the engineering, this whole race to make fusion power a reality.
Right.
But what does it all mean for the world? Like, what kind of future are we potentially unlocking here?
It really sparks the imagination, doesn't it? Fusion power, it has the potential to just reshape everything, not just our energy landscape, but also our economies, our societies, even our relationship with the planet.
Well, I mean, let's start with the most obvious impact, I guess, which is climate change. We're in this race against time to transition away from fossil fuels.
We are.
And fusion just offers this tantalizing prospect of clean, abundant energy. Like, could this be the silver bullet we've been searching for?
Right. It certainly has that potential, to be a real game changer in the fight against climate change. Imagine a world where power plants no longer pump carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, where we can meet our energy needs without the environmental burden of fossil fuels. I mean, that's the promise of fusion.
Yeah, that's a really powerful vision. But, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Fusion power is still a long way from being, commercially viable, right?
Yeah.
You're still talking decades of research and development,
Yeah.
billions of dollars in investments.
Yeah, it's not a quick fix, that's for sure. But the potential rewards, they're so significant that I think a lot of people believe it's an investment worth making. And, let's not forget, we are seeing remarkable progress.
Right.
I mean, the Wendelstein 7X, ITER, the advancements in inertial confinement fusion, these are all really positive signs.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically,
Yeah.
fusion power does become a reality,
Oh.
in the coming decades. What would that mean for global economies? Would we see a shift in the balance of power with, the energy-rich nations holding all the cards?
That's a crucial question, and it's hard to say for sure if fusion power becomes as widespread and accessible as we hope.
Right.
It could actually level the playing field, reducing dependence on fossil fuels, empowering nations that currently lack energy security.
Yeah.
But it could also create new geopolitical dynamics as countries vie for control over fusion technology and the resources needed to support it.
Right, so it's not just a simple equation.
No.
There are potential benefits, but also risks, winners and losers,
Yep.
just like any other major technological shift, really.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes me think of the internet,
Yeah.
This revolutionary technology that's connected the world in incredible ways.
Right.
But it's also created new forms of inequality and division.
That's a great analogy. Technology is a tool, and how we use it, how we govern it, that ultimately determines its impact on society.
Yeah, we can't just be focused on the technical aspects of fusion.
Yeah.
We need to be thinking about the ethical, the social, the economic implications as well. And that's a responsibility that falls on everyone. Right?
I completely agree. Scientists, policymakers, all of us. And it brings up another important question. What about the potential risks of fusion power? I mean, we've talked about all the promise, but are there downsides?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the possibility of military applications for fusion technology. Could this lead to, I don't know, a new arms race, a proliferation of even more powerful weapons? It's a chilling thought.
It is. It's a valid concern. While, the main focus of fusion research has been on peaceful energy production,
Right.
the underlying science could potentially be used for destructive purposes.
Yeah.
So it's really crucial that we establish, international safeguards and ethical guidelines to prevent the misuse of this technology.
And what about the economic and social impacts? If energy becomes incredibly cheap and abundant, could it lead to unintended consequences?
It could.
Like job displacement,
Yeah.
resource depletion,
Right.
maybe even geopolitical instability.
Those are all very real considerations, and we need to think carefully about how to manage this transition to a fusion-powered world.
Yeah.
Ensuring, a just and equitable distribution of benefits, while at the same time mitigating the potential risks. It requires a holistic approach, thinking about not just the technology, but its impact on people, on communities, on the planet as a whole.
This conversation has really opened my eyes. Fusion power, it's not just about solving our energy problems.
It's bigger than that.
It's about navigating this web of interconnected challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
And making choices that will ultimately shape the future we want to create.
Exactly. It's a future that's still being written, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage everyone listening to stay curious, stay informed, and engage in these conversations that will shape the future of fusion, and the future of our world.
Well said. It's been an incredible journey exploring the science, the challenges, the incredible potential of this, really transformative technology. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of fusion energy.
Yeah.